himself. All right, AT Town Hall. Hello, everybody. You don't want to know, like any other week. If only you were here and you heard the pre-recording conversation. So much funnier as you lead into it. But we are here. We have a plan. We might even be calling it a special event, but I thought we would take a detour from the special event, and wondered if the people that were at ATIA wanted to share anything about the conference. I'm not even setting it up any more than that. I'm just saying that. Do you want to share? Lauren, what do you want to share?
Oh, it was amazing to be in community with so many of our colleagues, and there were some really terrific sessions. There was so much networking. It was like a healing time, I think, after the pandemic, like to be together again. Because for me, I wasn't able to go last year in person, and so this was like, I have gone to some other conferences, but I don't know, these are people. Like it was really great. There was a ton of stuff I didn't get to do or see or do, and I still feel like I worked like 15 hours a day and am exhausted. But I think some of the highlights were the literacy stuff from the UNC Chapel Hill folks. I saw just an amazing poster that was on language sampling. So my nerdy SLP like antennas went up, and that was really cool. It was comparing using the communication matrix, and then also comparing using some different assessments that were formalized versus a play-based scenario, and what the outcomes were, and also like realized data language logging and how all of these lined up and provided information for what the student was doing. So that was really interesting, and something I hadn't seen or talked with anybody about in a while. That was kind of like my dissertation topic. So again, extra nerdy interest in play-based learning and language sampling. So that was a highlight for me. I don't know, so many highlights. There's so many highlights. They're like all blurring together, but I got to I don't know, there was some really awesome makers, switches and alternate access, and really getting to like talk to some people about some complex students, complex bodies, and getting ideas on like, how do I get a quad switch that like my student doesn't have reliable, but like sometimes his arm goes up, sometimes his foot kicks out. So like, how do I get like a quad splitter for a switch on any one of his extremities that will just do one thing, like move the page forward, or just have one action and not four different actions. So it was kind of
Beth just put in the chat the highlight that I was waiting for you to share, Lauren, about LJ.
And then, yes, and then my students. So my student presented, I think, as the youngest presenter, definitely at this conference, but I don't know, like ever. He's a 7th grader. And he was the last session of the last day of the in-person conference, and he presented about math and accessibility, and he just blew it out of the water. It was phenomenal, and I just sat there like crying that my student was. I sat next to Beth, and I was like, oh my God, he was so mature. He did such a beautiful job. I mean, not to brag on my student, but Beth vouched for me. He did a beautiful job managing as a presenter, like, can everybody hear me in the back? And here are the session codes, and, having different activities. Like he had a Padlet, and he had video, and he had pictures, and he had quotes, and he had handouts. I mean, he did everything. And I know it was hours and hours and hours of work. So that was my highlight, was seeing him. And I'm like, you're going to be the next AAC distinguished lecturer. Like, I don't think they're going to wait for you to be 18. I think you might be it. So that was really, really, really cool. And he loved that. Some kids have soccer that they travel with, and his grandparents were there, and they said, I think, our other son, he does like, travel soccer and or our other grandson, he does travel soccer and he like travels for these other things. He says, I think LJ is going to be on the presentation cycle and he's going to travel for presentations. And I said,
That's
yep.
great.
So,
By the time he's
anyway,
18, he'll be so ingrained into ATIA, he won't even need that lecture. He'll have his own sessions. He won't have time for that.
I know. Well,
Awesome.
CEO of ATIA was at his presentation, so he sat right in the front row, and so I think he's going to get a nice little spot next year, I hope. And he talked about some things that were challenging, but also like, no, since he's my student, there's so many things that are just going really well for him, which
Mhm.
is why he's able to present at this conference. I mean, he's just phenomenal. So we're going to see great things from LJ. So be on the lookout for him.
That's really cool. Lauren, does he have anything out there posted for people that weren't at the conference to see what he's
I
done?
don't know. I don't know.
That
Let
shit
me.
is on the, if you were at the conference and you didn't make it to his things are posted.
I
Yeah,
wonder
that's
if
what I mean. Of like,
can-
if you weren't signed up for the conference, is there a way somebody could see his stuff?
I think
'Cause
his
can-
next special project should be a Google site.
Yeah, and it might be. He's in a coding class next quarter, so we'll see what happens. So he might be making his own website. I think I could share his handouts. He's cool with that. So
You
let me-
can.
Yeah. All right.
You just need
Mike has
somebody to give
decided.
permission. Yes, you can. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Let me work on that because I gotta
Yeah, that'd be
organize my
great.
stuff. But I'll put him in the. I'll put him. Yeah. Can I
Awesome.
put him in the chat or no?
That's great.
Might have to share. Okay. So I have a little. As we were preparing for our own presentation, we have some accessibility issues because I wanted to be able to share outside of my organization. And the way that our systems are set up, you can't share outside of your organization because they've put staff and students in the same bucket of like
Hmm.
profiles or whatever.
Yeah,
So
permissions on your profile.
yeah. And so I
Yeah.
said, well, how do I share our handout? We want to do the QR code and we want to do it in like a kosher way. And it's kind of been like a long time thing. And they said, oh, well, you just have to put it from your personal account. Like, okay,
Hey, there you go. Problem solved.
problem solved. So, all right, I'll do a little bit of that.
Awesome. No pressure, but I
And
think
then-
it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool to see
Yeah.
anytime there's a user of technology who's sharing something, and just from the pictures and stuff, it sounded like he did amazing. I would love to see him in action.
He did. And he's doing some really unique things. Like his mom has programmed an adaptive mouse on his Accent 1000. So he uses his key guard and his Accent, and then he's able to like fast scroll, slow scroll, and use his adapted mouse on the Accent, but he interfaces with Google and everything on his computer. So he can do our learning management system, which is Canvas. He's got Google Drive. He's doing like artwork and other things in Google Keep. He has Google Keep and he's using a lot of the Google software. We have 365 as well, but he likes Google more.
Yeah.
I
really
love
cool.
it. I wish my teachers here could just see someone like that because I've got a kiddo who's a kindergartner who could probably, if we could get him there, could be like that. And they're like, I can't even I at least have the kindergarten teacher going, just bring him to class. Even if you don't have a parent, just bring him to class. And I'm like, get him in the classroom. I'm like, his IQ is 80. He doesn't belong in the severe and profound classroom. Put him in the classroom.
Yeah.
I'm like, teach him how to use his communication device. This kid's gonna fly. But
Mhm.
it's just everybody's so hesitant. I'm like, just trust me.
Mhm.
And Rebecca, that's the whole idea of the video of him even him presenting or just sharing anything. I always feel like I don't always feel, but I feel like at times there's teams that I could talk until I fell over, and I don't know that they would get it, but they would get it from like 3 minutes of his description of what he's doing.
Yeah.
Oh
Beth,
yeah.
Beth, do you remember off the top of your head what the name of the AAC User Speakers Bureau is? I'm blanking.
The USAC,
Inside
impact, you mean
Impact Voices. Yes.
Impact Voices.
I mean Impact Voices. Yes. Thank you.
We
See, I
should,
could get to the I, but that was about as far as I got. And I think the power is whether it's Lauren's student or somebody else, having a student that Rebecca's student can see,
Yeah.
Mhm.
hey, this could be me in 3 years or whatever the case is. So maybe he's not as a kindergartner in a place where like, oh, I could present whatever, but to see the value of why this communication thing matters and why, building self-advocacy matters. I think seeing it. So that's why I was trying to think, because I know that they have a couple of things out there. So if it's not Lauren's student that has something right out there right away that we could use, thanks, Beth, that we could use to guide teams. I have no brain power or very little voice at this point.
And,
So
and this is.
somebody
the-
else is going to have to help me out.
I put in for that's the speakers, the USAC AAC speaker in action, impact voices is different. I'm looking for it right now too.
I know there's been some like strands at like Tash where there's self advocates, but I
Mhm.
think the best sessions at ATIA that I've gone to, like last year, there were a few, I don't know, teenage to young 20. They were in high school still, these students, and their aunt was an assistive technology specialist and they had dyslexia and they were talking about using their speech to text software. They were presenting about the work that they were doing in these 3 young men, teenage boys that were presenting. And that was, even now a year later, I'm still thinking like that was the impactful one. If I could just show my students that one. And wouldn't it be awesome if ATIA had those sessions recorded and had like a strand for free where people could see their
Mhm.
sessions so that all of us across the country, globally, could show like, here's 3 teenage boys who are doing this. Like, and they were so insightful about their own needs and how they talked about themselves in such a positive, affirming way. Like, I'm still really smart and I just use this technology. As long as my teacher can give this to me, I can do anything. I'm going to be using this in college. I think one of the boys might have been like going to college. I can't remember. But they
Jordan
had Jordan. Do you
from
remember them?
Jordan from Closing the Gap. She spoke, she was the main speaker.
Oh,
she's
Jordan
an-
Zimmerman.
Yes. So we showed that to our life team, just the little bit of them, because we've been really working hard to get everybody on board. And like my life team was like, oh, and I'm like, this is why I push. This is
Mhm.
why I sound like the crazy lady who says, you have to model, you have to use, you can't just, when the kid's frustrated and she's trying to tell you something, you can't take away her device because she's messing around. Don't do it.
Yeah. I think we're trying to build that here and do like LJ's mom recorded his session. And so I said, Mom, can we put that up for all of our staff to see? And then we're working on building like a person first account of using whatever tools they have. So we'll have like a whole strand of our own impact voices where we'll use like the AAC distinguished lecturers. Dr. Yusin Chung is at George Mason. She's going to do one, I think, hopefully for us. And just to hear right from the individual who's using it and what's
Yeah.
helpful, what's not, knowing that each person is unique and different. But
Yeah, I was also at a session that Stephanie Fassoff, I'm going to butcher her last name, but Fassoff did about emotional regulation as an AAC user and kind of talked about how for her, one of the avenues that was helpful was CBT, but in order for her to participate in that kind of therapy for her, that we kind of talked through like what words are naturally in most devices and what words are not in any device that she needs, like, even just based off like the emotion wheel, how many of those motions don't exist in an AAC user's device. So that was a really great session as well.
That sounds really good. I love the idea. Lauren, I'm going to steal it. I'll give you credit. I wrote your name down next to it. Because I just got an email this morning, maybe not this morning, but it's one of the ones I uncovered this morning in my inbox from ATIA asking for feedback from the Strand advisors. So I will also throw that out to you guys now. That's your moment. If you have another idea of something, it will make me feel very productive. I won't take credit for any of it. I'll give you all I'll say I heard this from.
He only did one thing today, so he's got to like.
I got to do
check
something. I
off
got to do
some
something, man. I got.
I think that would be amazing, like to have, and it's across all different areas,
Mhm.
like a self advocate, but not even there's some piece of that, but really just showing the technology that they use and talking about how that's improving their access to whatever, if it's work or it's school or if it's socially. And they don't have to be an hour. They could
No.
just, I mean, you have some ones sort of for free that you could kind of do from the sessions, but if you could have people do, clips of, here's
Mhm.
me, here's the technology I use, that'd be
I think that's
awesome.
great. I think that's so powerful. We did this a few years back at our statewide AT conference. For our keynote, it was just a panel of technology users, all ages, all environments, all disabilities. It's just kind of a cross section of people from our
Mhm.
state, and they got to share their story and just kind of ground the entire day. Like, remember, as the day goes on, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it.
Yeah.
That's incredibly powerful. It's
I'm
incredible.
really glad to
Love
see the
that.
increase in presenters who are using the technology themselves. I know last year at ATIA, India Oaks actually called out ATIA because when you went previously to sign up as a presenter, technology user, AAC user was not an option.
Mm.
You could be a practitioner or you could be a researcher, you could be whatever, but it wasn't an option. And I think that definitely has shifted. Her presentation last year kind of shifted forward because I think, and maybe it was just my brain feeling skewed, that there were more this year as AAC users or technology users that I've seen in previous years.
Yeah. And Alyssa, I wonder, because I saw things this year that I hadn't seen before. And I'm wondering if I was just more in tune to it for whatever reason, or if it was really more like I also noticed, I felt like there was a really nice uptick in conversations and sessions that were around coaching and those kinds of things. And I don't know if I was just more in tune to pick those out of the schedule this year. So I'm not quick to say that there were more this year, but there were more that were noticed. I noticed more as I went through.
You just keep making it far higher up on my bucket list to get to ATIA, just saying, because right now there's no way I can swing conference, hotel room, and a
Yeah.
plane trip.
Yeah.
And I don't think my district can quite swing all of it either. So
Yeah. And then there's Rebecca, there's always the virtual part of it, which
Yep.
it seems like will continue on. It doesn't seem like that's going to go away. It's a part of the conference. Obviously, you're not going to be able to pick free will out of all the sessions. Unfortunately, there was only, it's only probably at any given session time, maybe there's 5 things being streamed, maybe 6. Was all the Caribbean rooms. So whatever those are, however many of those there are, those are your live streaming rooms. But it seemed like it was a pretty nice cross section of sessions from the conference that were live streamed.
I like the people. I'm a people watcher, so I get more out of the in-person, and it's nice to be able to make the connections and see the other people. And
yeah, I agree. It's that idea of who's nodding at the same thing I am, and how can I get you in the hallway and have a conversation with you, right? Like it hit you the same way it hit me. And look, we're in line, and I don't know you, so let me figure out how I can know you.
Let me practice my social skills that are really bad.
Correct. I'm going to come at you, and it's not going to be appropriate, but sorry, I'm going to
Don't
stop
worry.
you.
We all had like weird, awkward moments. Like,
Tell us
oh my
more.
gosh, we're Twitter friends, and I'm meeting you for the first time. But even here, I don't know I haven't seen all of you in person. And then when I see you at the conference, I'm like, oh, I feel like I know you. I meet with you on Mondays regularly, but
Yeah, I think
it's a weird experience.
It was weird. It was great. I mean, that part of it's always great. I think that's really good. Alyssa, something else that jumped out that you're thinking? Thanks, Lauren.
I had a moment. There was a thought.
It's gone.
It's gone. It
Will you-
might come back around.
Do you want to watch the entire room as we put the AT Rockford team on blast right now? Do you wanna do
That would be fantastic. Let's do it.
Hey, friends. Does anyone want to share something that you learned from the conference or some kind of exciting thing? Now let's all stare at him and see who gets up off their desk first. Yeah, here we go. Hi, everybody.
You hear us?
We can.
So one of the
Okay.
things that I was
Go ahead.
thinking of is using the bookmark ability on the app to be able to appropriately gauge or give an idea of which ones might have more people attending. Because there seemed to be a lot of them this weekend that were very smushed in small rooms. That if they would have, I guess, using technology, you know, I mean, I bookmarked 2 or 3 sometimes on a different time frame. But at least they would have known that those were the ones that people had interest in. And then, what was the second one?
The other one is if there was a way to mark the ones that like Lauren was talking about. Like that would have been fabulous. It's always really hard to look through the it's really hard to hear feedback actually. I'm coming back through the speakers and we're trying to figure that out. So it's really hard. My head is trying to figure this out. Actually, so when you're looking through the descriptions, it's hard to pick those that Lauren's talking about.
Yeah.
You don't see, and sometimes that's really what we need is to see those personal users.
Yeah. Yeah. So almost like
Like its own strand, and it's hard. Like coaching is kind of the same way, right? Like
yeah,
you're
kind of it
coaching
rolls under the
in-
radar a bit, right, Lauren? Those things kind of, and like Holly's saying, they kind of roll under the radar. And is it a secondary strand? Is it a focus area? There already are secondary strands.
I could see a secondary strand. I would hate to have a strand be AAC users because
I
then
know.
it diminishes the topic.
Yeah,
It's-
and I
Right.
think it's so
It's
so
a
much
bit of an
broader than that.
inspiration
And I
point
think
kind
it
of
can
thing.
be so much broader than that. Because you'd also, I could say some of the equal value in that could be employers or instructors who are sharing personal stories about those things. Those to me might hit just as hard. Obviously a user story is going to hit a little harder, but this idea of just someone who's in it, using it, sharing it. And it goes back to some of my struggles at times, is that there's so many people I think that we miss at the conference who have something to say, but don't feel ready to have 60 minutes to say it in.
There
They
needs
have
to be-
20 minutes they could say it in.
Maybe there needs to be more and honestly, I'm gonna take that back to you, Mike, to like strand advisors, because you guys could use your spotlight sessions as more, I mean, there have been spotlight sessions in the past that have been panels.
Yeah.
And I know there are different strand advisors that have done that. I think also, I think it's part of I mean, I know I personally take this really seriously as part of my role in the larger AT community is to mentor and to invite people who maybe weren't speakers to speak with me to join in, and so that and that's something I've done over the years. I'm not perfect. I don't do it every time or anything like that, but I do have, like, I feel like that's part of our responsibility to, so a large majority of the people that are sitting on this right now are people that that have that ability to share their platform with somebody else. Like, not that I can guarantee that I'm going to get selected for every conference that I go to, but even like recently I was invited to speak at a conference. It's going to be in Virginia in April, and the session that I sent them, I said it included 2 other people that were not me, right? Like, because I felt like the topic that I wanted to speak on was going to be value, so I think we have those abilities to be, to mentor those people on. I mean, I know there's some formal things, like there's the Joy Zabala mentoring award that Alyssa is participating in and stuff like that. But I feel like we all have to take it upon ourselves as part of our responsibility is bringing, and whether it's just a person with, whether it's just another professional, whether it's somebody like an LJ or you know, or whatever.
A user,
Um,
yeah.
You know, making them do it. I also just like, and then I'm gonna shut up. Like, as far as the stories, like LJ's session wasn't, his story made his session better, but he really was talking about what you need to do to make math more accessible
Mhm.
for, it wasn't the LJ site
Story.
story.
Yeah.
It was, how do you make math more accessible for an augmentative communication user? It was about the vocabulary and the fans that he needed on his device that don't come there, and showing like how the language that he needed in order to be able to direct his scribe to set up a math problem for that he was solving. So it was so much more than his story.
Right.
It was powerful in part because he contributed his own story to it, as are other sessions where people share their stories,
Yeah.
whatever their stories are. Some of that simply comes down to what makes a good presentation. And I was blown away by LJ, not because he was an AAC user who did this, but because he was a 14-year-old who knew how to give a good, an excellent presentation.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Right.
AAC part was like secondary, like all of what he had. Like, I work with adults all the time and coaching them, and they don't have it.
Mhm.
So that to
Yeah.
me, like, was that was, it's like twofold. Now I'm gonna be quiet.
No, I think it's a really good point. I think that makes a lot of sense. Is his story was powerful, and it added to his session, which was, you're right, not a story about him. It was a story about a topic related to AT, and he brought his own personal experiences in. But the trick here, and then go back to that secondary strand idea or something else. How would you know that person was in there if you were scanning the app? Like, how would you know that that story had potential to come out from an actual user of technology unless you opened everyone and scanned
Yeah.
through everyone?
That's it's the open everyone. And I think it's because they don't give us that lovely color coded guide anymore.
Start me on that. Oh my God, I could talk for 4 days about that. Like, I don't get that anymore.
Hey, they had 2 pages with like the bios of all the strand advisors, Mike, in that book that they gave everyone.
Here's the book if you didn't come. Here's the book. And
What?
it's, I don't know, it's
Show them the picture where all you strand advisors are.
it's 19 pages. Now, let's not attack the strand advisors and their pictures,
I'm not attacking the
because
strand advisors. I'm just saying
I
that's
gotta
wasted
get
space
something
that
here.
could have gone to what Alyssa said.
I think especially for people who are, oh, it's so lovely. Yeah. Oh, darn, we can't see them all.
Sorry.
I- I think for someone who has been many times, when I think back on what helped my organizational structure from an
Mhm.
executive functioning perspective, it's that being able to see them. And maybe you replicate that in the app, that's fine. What was available in the app did not do this, serve the same purpose as that lovely color coded, see all the sessions at once, guide.
Yeah, it doesn't
And-
replicate it easily.
And I know that they've been given that feedback before in the past. I think
Every
that
year.
they just made a decision not
Every
to utilize that feedback to make a change, which I guess it's their prerogative. They're the conference hosts, but I think it does make it hard unless you have the time, which I did not between our pre-conference, Mike. I like sat for Thursday morning, went, oh crap, I should probably decide what sessions I'm going to. Like, I just didn't have the time to do the deep dive. Otherwise I would have sat and read. You would have to open up every single one, read it, and then make a decision, and then go to the next one and read it, make a decision. And it didn't, the app itself didn't lend itself well to that.
Doing that. Yeah. Yeah. It'd be one thing. I think about the positive of an app. If you're putting everything in an app, so I'm trying to think of it from someone else's perspective now. I want to say, I like that piece of paper. That's what I want. But okay, I'm going to go past that. That's me as a conference attendee. That helps me. If you told me, because it's in an app, we can gauge things like our friends at Rockford there said, if I could gauge how many people were interested and I could on the fly move things to a better space because I sensed that how many people want to see it, then I'm in the app all day long. Fine. Because then it's fluid and it's moving and it's changing and things are happening. But if that's not happening, if the app is in essence static, where nothing's moving out of it, then why not give me the paper too?
Right. I think that's partly my argument. And it seems like there are speakers and sessions every year that always end up in the wrong size room. And
Yeah,
it
always. And
wasn't
that's,
here. Karen Erickson, give her the Caribbean room.
Take a
Every
shot.
year,
Yeah.
people sitting on the floor, sitting wherever, whatever. Kelly Studing closed out the conference on Saturday morning with a room that people were sitting outside the door.
Mhm.
So I think, I don't know, somebody from ATIA comes around and counts. I just hope that actually leads to a change next year for how they decide who goes where.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, and Beth, I agree. The paper is incredibly inaccessible. No, I agree. As an option, I would love
No,
it.
no,
Yeah.
she's
No, read
he's
mine,
saying
I
the
read
opposite.
better.
It's
She's
actually
saying
very
the
inaccessible.
opposite.
Oh, sorry. I thought, oh no,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, thank you. I didn't read your whole thing. I saw that and I was like, I agree that if the
There is
paper was
very
all I got, that's
inaccessible,
not
that
the
is
answer.
Not, there
Yeah.
needs to be both, when we
Yeah.
only give people that digital option and it's
Right?
not something you can
Options.
print.
Exactly, Jennifer. UDL, what? We'd
Yeah,
apply UDL
right.
concepts to our conference?
Exactly. So Murph, you came in late. I'll put you on the spot because I saw what you wrote. What would have helped you be better at that? You said you did a horrible job of choosing sessions. What would have helped you?
I don't know. Well, like Leslie put up more time into it than I did. And she was like, I'm opening all the slides and I'm looking at this. And like some people I knew said they came in with like a plan of like, I want to learn specifically about this. And so I just I didn't put in like a lot of time ahead of time, but then yes, scrolling through the app and bookmarking all these things. And also I really want to see certain presenters. And so then I'm like, wait, scrolling all the way to the bottom. And then I'd be in somebody else's session and someone would be like, are you in Karen Erickson's session? And I'm like, wait a minute, that was now.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing that made it hard for me too.
Yeah, it's hard. Can you do that in the app? I'm telling you, this is how little I looked
Yeah.
in.
So you can search by presenter
can,
and
okay.
then it leads you there. So I did start that way. The few that I did bookmark before the conference, before our pre-conference day, I searched for like my top 5 names, Karen Erickson being one of them, and kind of pinpointed and knew like one of their sessions was when Judy Schoonover and I were presenting. Okay, great. I can't see her then. So when else is she presenting? So yeah, it was a 8:30 a.m. session that I got myself there for because I knew it was my option by searching for speaker first.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I did that too, but then when it came down to the time frame, it was like 1 o'clock. I wouldn't remember that was the title, and I don't know, it just seemed like scrolling all the way to the bottom for the speaker, and I felt like it wasn't really clear what the vendor sessions were. Like I know a couple people went to sessions that they didn't realize were vendor sessions and were not like clearly introduced that way either. And then halfway through, they were like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So that was another one too.
Yeah, the app has its pros and cons. You have to go through a couple days ahead. And if you bookmark them, it'll go into your calendar and then it'll pop up in my Google Calendar, which drives my husband crazy because he can see my Google Calendar and there's like all this stuff in there. But that helps me because then that section pops up and, you know, I put 3 or 4 in there and then I go, okay, I want that one, you know, and if that one's horrible, I can walk out and go to that one. But I agree that we need that paper too, that paper spreadsheet, because in the new location, I'm going to be lost. I mean, I have the Carib down pat now, and then so I'm okay in the app. But the first couple of years, I depended on that. I was there with a highlighter on that paper. You know.
Yeah, I think
I think we're going to need paper for next year as well.
The new
map
place
and
will be a little different. I didn't go to see it. I know some of the strand advisors went to see it, but I didn't go.
Yeah, give us the info. Is it like bigger, smaller?
It's bigger. It's a bigger place. It's a bigger
Okay.
conference center. It's a bigger hotel. It's along that street that leads into Disney Springs. So right, Alyssa, it's right on that road there. Yeah.
Yep.
Maybe a mile from Disney Springs would be my guess if I had to think about where it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alyssa.
I was just going to say, I know from just the facility itself, I would not plan on going back to your room in between things because there is a large hike between things, between where you would end up staying if you stay on that property and and where the actual convention-y conference center portion of it is.
Yeah, I know the conference center will be different from what we're experiencing at the Carib, in that there will be a central, what they almost refer to as a hub. Registration, things like that will be there, and the conference rooms shoot off like spokes. And so there'll always be kind of the filtering back to that main space, which I think could have some value. I don't know what that main space looks like, but I get that part. I kind of like that in a sense, that everything comes back. But yeah, I don't know distances. I don't know what that looks like. I just know the conversations that they had, where there was an expectation that they would accept the same amount of sessions next year. So I don't know if the conference is necessarily going to get bigger, but it should be about the same. I think the attendance this year was back up to where it was prior to COVID, right? Because it was busy. There was a lot of people there.
Yeah. So I saw the dates, but it didn't say anything of like pre-conference. Is that still going to be? So the pre-conference just isn't reported on the like
Yeah, so I
January
think the pre-con,
25th to 27th. Okay.
yeah, 25th to 27th is the actual conference, and then the pre-con, assume it's going to be Tuesday and Wednesday like it normally is.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and besides that, I wish I could say much more. I don't know that I know much more. The Strand meeting was at the same time as the App Smackdown, so I had to leave. Maybe they don't want me to talk in the meet. Wait a second.
I know you
The way to
guys
give
all
a-
have. Oops, sorry.
That's okay.
I know
Kelly.
you guys all have your life together, not like me. So just one more hate of not having a paper list of all the sessions is I tend to have battery issues. Like my phone's always dying, especially when I'm using it a lot. And then I'm like, I don't know where I'm going next because my phone died again. Anyway.
That's a really good point, right? That whole emergency situation when your phone dies and then you're out of luck and you just gotta leave, Kelly, right? You just gotta do nothing else to do except find a plug. But yeah, I think
Yep.
those are issues too. I think that's, yeah. It is interesting. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the app. I never have been, but I understand the process of the app as a way to go. Well, this was helpful. Who else was there that hasn't had a chance to speak yet? Anybody else? No. Other thoughts? Kelly, if you could tell them something, Kelly Reynolds, if you could tell them something in the conference planning committee and say I was to write it down and bring it back, what would you have me write down? I broke her phone. Okay. What do you think?
Yeah. Could you, if you could plan for there not to be rain, so I don't get drenched, that'd be great.
I'm gonna write that down.
I'm really glad that there was only that one little section of really bad rain during sessions and that the rest of the weather was much more like what it is normally this time of year, that people could actually go outside.
I will say,
fun.
if I did not have such a problem with having to win prizes, I would not have left and then come back during the middle of the rainstorm. But I had to be there for the drawing.
Gotta win a prize. I get it. Prizes are prizes. I get it.
I will tell you for next year, it will be colder next year because I will be coming down, because that's just the way it happens. When I am there,
Excellent.
it drops to 30 degrees.
That's funny.
And I
You
have
and
to
my
go buy
wife must
3
have
extra
similar,
sweatshirts.
you must have a weather pattern
know?
similar to my wife. She's like, I'm looking at my phone right now as I'm talking to her. She goes, I see it's 80 degrees there. How is it? I go, it's not really that nice. She goes, I see on my phone it's 80 degrees there. How is it? I'm like, oh, that's pretty nice. Yeah, it's nice. She came in 2020 and it
Just
was
as a-
50 and rained.
30 and 50 would be great compared to the -20 that we
Deal.
work. It is 40 degrees here and it's like sweatshirt weather right now for everybody in Nebraska because it's been in the negatives.
Exactly. All right.
It
well,
is a known fact that when I go out with the Girl Scouts for Girl Scout camping, they just all bring their rain gear because it will rain. It's a known thing. Your troops going camping. Okay, everybody take rain gear.
a rain magnet. I hear you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was good. Anybody have any final words about ATIA 2023? Should we jump into special
We have a
event?
few more recorded sessions live. I mean, there was a good cross section,
Yeah.
But there were, I would have liked to have popped out of one or two of them into something different, but there was nothing really for me to pop into that made sense for me. You
Yeah.
did good. The live sessions were
I didn't do
excellent.
anything, but thanks.
Much better than past years. I was included. The moderators did a great job of including the chats,
Good.
relaying, I gotta say. And Beth, I was really impressed how well you did.
Wow,
I was
thank
in
you.
one of
I'm assuming
those.
when you say you mean me specifically. So thank you. That's great. No, I think that's good to hear because I think as a moderator, I can only again speak for myself. That is a very nerve-wracking hour because I recognize
Oh, yeah.
I am that person that gives them their voice in the room. And trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to do that and make sure they are participating and that they're getting what they want out of it. And so that's nice to hear. I definitely will bring that back because I think that other moderators probably feel that same pressure of, oh my God, I have to pay attention the whole time and I have to watch the chat and I have to listen and I have to interrupt nicely,
Right.
which is always fun. But yeah, that's good to hear.
And the only other thing I can think of,
go ahead.
the only other thing I can think of, and I don't know how you can do it, if you could somehow mark those that are being recorded to view later, because that would have helped me with some of my anxiety that I really need to go to this one and I can't go to it. That might help me a little going, okay, I'm going to mark that one for later and that one for later, and then I'll jump over to this one.
I mean, any of the live streamed ones got recorded, right?
Right. But
Yeah.
Didn't they record some of the others, a few of the others?
I
No,
don't
they
think
didn't.
so. I think if it was live streamed, it was recorded. I think that was pretty much it. They had setups in all of those Caribbean rooms to
Okay,
to
because
live
I thought
stream.
I saw stuff. I thought
It
I
could
saw
be.
stuff popping up, but maybe I'm wrong. I was
It could have
tired
also
by the
been,
end,
it
so
could have
maybe I'm
also been, Lori, they were highlighting vendor submitted sessions
Vendor,
that then
yeah,
went live
okay.
perhaps during the conference. I know they were
Okay.
doing that, where they
Okay.
gave vendors an opportunity to record prior and then they dropped them
Okay.
out during the conference. So.
Yeah. Okay.
I just want to
Okay.
bring this feedback back. I mean, I do not understand why when we paid the money that we paid for this conference, and then if you wanted to see any of the things that were not the free vendor recordings, I'm sorry, that should be included. Like I didn't get to a session, I should be able to.
Yeah, paying another
I paid the
$150
full-
on top of it.
I paid the
Not
full
okay.
price for this conference. I got 0 discounts other than the early registration. I should have had access to every recorded session. I should have access to that coming back.
I'm writing it down. Yeah, because I agree. I would love that because I would like to know that if I
Expensive
came
event.
back, I had access to all those Caribbean rooms that I walked past while I was doing other stuff. Yeah. Okay. Good. Oh my
That should be for any conference.
Yeah, I mean, right. We could have those conversations too. These are the kind of things that I think conference organizers in general should start to really kind of think about is how do you ensure that your participants are getting the value that they deserve from your event? And like Beth said, you paid the full amount. This is not a cheap conference to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. There are free conferences. I'm involved in a free conference.
Yeah.
It's in a couple of weeks where if you show up and you watch it live, it's free. To get the recordings, you have to pay a nominal fee.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that's different. That's because you are actually spending money to record, like there's more money involved to record the conference.
Right.
And so they're doing that. They also want, people to show up live. But it's a free conference. It didn't cost a penny if you attended anything live. I paid a lot of money, or my employer,
Yeah.
excuse me, paid a lot of money for me to attend ATIA. Didn't get any of it for free.
Mm-hmm. And our Rockford friends in the chat said, especially when we attended the pre-conference and the regular conference. So they've already put out a ton of money, and then to add in money on top of that to access some charges. I love it. I don't know which one of you, Holly wrote that. Out of the question.
Because I did a virtual presentation when it was all virtual, and they took that virtual presentation and they're making money off of that virtual presentation. And 2 years later, I'm still getting emails from people saying, hey, can you email me this resource? And I'm sitting here thinking, it's not my obligation. And I'm actually kind of a little irritated that it's still up. Just because I'm getting so many emails, and as somebody who presents semi-regularly, I feel this obligation to respond because that's sort of my reputation as well. But yet, at what point does that end? And when did they take it off? And so as a presenter, I started asking that question a lot more. But for these big conferences, I mean, really, what are you going to do? Well, no, I'm not going to present. That's pretty much your only option because they're not going to negotiate with you. For some of the smaller things they do, yeah, no, I don't want it posted for 2 years. So, again, Beth, it kind of frustrates me because they continue to make money off of it. And I got a very minuscule amount taken off of my registration. So that's my big frustration.
Jennifer, I'm with you.
Yeah,
Just give me 1 second to
Jennifer,
let me pull my soapbox out from under my desk for a second. I could talk about this for conservatively a week and a half, if you want to talk about this. Really
yeah,
pay
I
attention to
agree.
those things when you put them in. There is a box that says I do not want to be recorded on the presentation form. Now, recognize if you feel comfortable saying that and what the repercussion of that might be, so be it. I always check that box. I will not be recorded. I'm not interested in that. For that exact reason of what you said. If you're an independent consultant, if you're someone who does this a lot, every time someone watches that, they are actually reaching their hand in my pocket and taking money out of it. So you really have to be pretty strong with that. The only session that I ever do at the conference that gets recorded is the app Smackdown, because I don't care. I don't say anything except goofy nonsense in between when each person comes up. So it doesn't matter. But you have to be aware of that. The fact that your money is being made on something that was yours and you're not getting any of it is really upsetting. That really, really bothers me. And so, I put that out to everybody. Mary says we need royalties.
yeah,
We need to be aware.
Mike, I had like a similar experience, and they told me I did this webinar for my professional organization. They told me it was going to be up for like a certain amount of time, but then it became like the bestseller and kind of like the only one that was up. It was up. It's been up for more than 7 years, and I have a problem because things have changed, and I'm like, this is out of context now because I did this in 2014 or
That's a really good
2015,
point.
and it's like really bothering me. And and people now, like even students that I had, they were like, oh, I watched your webinar. I'm like, don't look at that. Like, it's
Don't watch
old
that
now.
webinar. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to be like, take it down. And they told me that it was only going to be up for like 2 years. And then I had to go back and say, you need to take it down because it's been up for like 7 years and it's just like not appropriate anymore. And it really bothered me.
Yeah.
It really
I
bothered
think
me.
it's a
And
really
again,
good,
it's like, if you're a presenter, I feel like you're giving your session, and if they do things like record it or make it available, like, why are you paying so much money to go to a conference? I mean, I am learning a lot from other people, but this is like a service that you do to help others too. So you still have to pay a full registration as a presenter, and that's a hardship.
yeah, it is. It's not, if you wanted to feel pretty like, if you wanted to get angry about it, which I'm always all for, you could say
Maybe you
things
are.
like, if none of us presented, there would be no conference to go to. So why would you not facilitate our participation? And why wouldn't you respect our wishes? Lauren, if that was my session and it was up for 7 years, I would be losing my mind. I would spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out how to get that down, because that's how much it would bother me.
Okay, thank you for saying that, because I felt like I might have been
No,
having unrealistic expectations,
you
but
were
I was
not.
just
Let
like,
me help you.
this has changed a lot. I was talking about a little
Yeah.
bit of, yeah.
I think
A
there's
lot. Luckily, a lot has changed in our field in 7 years.
Right.
That's good. And a lot of my own learning has changed. And I think, even like Karen Erickson was saying, we have to keep iterating, and things I say in 6
Right.
months, they are going to be, we learned more from the research or whatever. Like, that's why we pay to be part of these organizations, to find out the most current information. But 7 years old. Okay. Thank you for validating that.
And then I might
That's
even
crazy.
reach out to that organization and say, look, and I would actually write them a letter. I wouldn't just reach out. I would write them a letter. Like, look, I'm requesting that you take that down because of those reasons you just said. Is these topics have changed. The field has moved in a direction, has continued to evolve. Things have continued to evolve, and this information is no longer as relevant to the field as it was 7 years ago, and it needs to be updated.
Yeah, I've done that exact thing, written I'm not going to call it a cease and desist letter, but it essentially was.
It is in essence, yeah.
Like, stop.
Mhm.
I would be happy to talk about a new contract with you for, and then you have control over what goes in that contract about providing an updated resource, et cetera, that, you know, that could be on your site for a maximum of 18 months or whatever it is that you
Mhm.
feel like is reasonable in that time frame. But yeah, I've basically done a 2-in-1, write the letter that's like, take it down effective this date.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk about a contract about providing updated resource to your members or whoever the audience is.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to do it. It's kind of a 1-2. It takes the sting out of rip that thing down off your website, but no, instead replace it with something else, and then you
Yeah.
figure out what that looks like that's comfortable for you.
Okay. I really appreciate that. And I might reach out just because I don't have like I need some mentorship in like a contract and speaker agreement kind of stuff like that, because mine have been pretty simple. And then I've run into things like this when
Mhm.
it sort of goes
Yeah,
to the
and
next
like
level.
Beth put in the comments in
That's a
the
great
chat,
comment, Beth.
send
Yeah.
it return receipt or tracked or in some way so that it can't be, oh, I didn't get it.
I didn't
Because
get it.
then when they don't respond 2 weeks later, you can send a message with, and I told people in my session with Judy, sometimes a little slightly passive aggressive. It's why I wear the assistive technology is not cheating shirt some places intentionally. But I will take a snapshot or include the tracking information from that first letter. I see that you've received this on this date, but I have not yet heard as to what your action's going to be.
Correct. I like that Alyssa considers that passive aggressive. I would call that aggressive aggressive, and I like it. I think it's fine. Yeah, I think those are the kind of things. I think that you're a professional who's sharing information with the field. You have to be respected in that sense, and that's a respect thing about what you do. And really, if nothing else, I would encourage all of you as you go forward, read those speaker agreements. I know there was a time where I wouldn't read them. I would just be like, "Yep, I'll present on that day and time, sure." And that only has to bite you in the butt maybe 3 times. Well, for me, it was like 3 times. You are all probably much better. It'll only be once, but I feel I got bit like 3 times, where I had to go back to people and say, no, well, that's not the spirit of what I agreed to. And Lauren, yours is a spirit thing at this point. They said, well, yours is just wrong at this point. How long they've kept it up. It's just not right.
But I'm like, I
that's-
don't even want to do another one because you're just going to do this again. It makes me want to just say, I'm done with you. Because even one time, just feels icky.
Yeah,
So
it does. It does. I agree. I
Yeah.
think that it's really, we have to look out for ourselves within the context of what we share in the field. I know that there's times when if I do a free webinar for somebody, I might share slightly less information, more overviewy information, and then go forward with deeper information when someone asks for it and pays for it. Again, you have to be compensated for your time and your knowledge and your participation in the field and all that stuff. Right, Murph? Right. I see Murph just staring at the screen intently.
That's
Why
right.
I called her out.
Listen, I'm not feeling great after.
he's a
coming
little
home.
tired.
I think I got a cold.
That
It's
is
a long
officially
couple
what
of
the
days.
hangover of ATIA looks like. There it is. That was it.
Yes. Did you take a screenshot of me? You can use that.
I didn't. I like you enough that I'm not going to. I'm going to let that slide just in my memory.
Bags.
That's great.
I need a little more sleep.
Well, everybody, that took a turn today. How about that, huh? How was that special event? We didn't talk about the book at all. That's all right. We can, the beauty of it. We'll push it to next week. It's okay. That was much more ATIA 2023 than I thought we would talk about. And actually that conversation at the end was really good. So I love those kind of conversations. I think that's really important. Thoughts before we leave? And we'll talk about the book next week. We'll talk about chapter that gives you another week to read the book. Chapter 5 and 6, we'll talk about next week.
I really appreciate just having the conversation like we did at the end, because this is kind of information that you share only like with colleagues. It's like, how do you know this stuff, especially when you're first starting out or you don't have mentorship. So
Right.
thank you for sharing and being a support on that. Because again,
Well,
like I
thanks
said,
for
I was
bringing it
like,
up.
oh, I'm just being really unreasonable. I'm like, am I just being a bitch about this? Like,
No.
really? I mean, sorry,
No.
should I like
No to
bleep that
all
out?
that.
But like, okay, thank you. We
No,
don't
that
know
was-
if you don't know.
Yeah, right. I think it's a good conversation. I think it's important to have and ask. That's what this group is for, right? That's what we do. That's why we do this every Monday.
Yeah.
I don't know how
and
many
we did
times
have-
during the conference I said this is like one of the best parts of the week. Every week.
We did have a conversation at Ed Camp, which I was not in, but about private practice. I forget what the actual title of the little group session discussion was.
Entrepreneurship. and I know
Entrepreneurship. Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's another space. I know there are a couple of us that had talked about putting in a presentation someplace, maybe ATI, maybe not, about like, it's not business 101, but like AT business 101, like what
Yeah.
does this even look like?
If Kelly Fonner was here right now, she would be shaking her head because the two of us have talked about this session for years and we just never get it together to put it in. But the session idea would be, so you want to be an AT consultant.
Yep. Next
And then
year
it's just
might
a
be the year.
conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, I would go to
I
that
think
session
that
too.
would
Murph.
be great because there's so much about it that you don't know. And, there's so much like ongoing mentorship that needs to happen because you encounter these things and you're like, what do I do about this? And so.
It's funny. I was thinking about this on my flight home as I was kind of reflecting and staring out the window in a very nice kind of trance-like moment. And I thought about that session again. So you want to be an AT consultant because I think that's real power. I also had another thought so you want to present at ATIA next year. Like, what does that look like? And I wonder if that's not a way to get to what Beth said about that idea of offering ourselves up as, that sounds like a great idea. Do you want a sidekick?
Presenters. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want a co-presenter? Do you want someone to help you? Even if you don't want us to present with you, do you want someone to bounce ideas off of as you go forward? Because you talk to some people in the hall, you talk to them in the group as you're in a session, and they have such great ideas, but then you mention about speaking and they really get scared, like really scared.
Those would be great things.
Yeah. I
Those
think,
of us who are kind of newer to the situation and trying to figure it out. And
yeah, I
I
just
don't
think
know,
there's a lot of potential, right? I think there's a lot of opportunities. One of my favorite sessions was in a room sitting next to some guy I never met before. And we were both really digging the session. Like I look over and he's nodding and I'm nodding. I'm like, yeah, man, right on. We got this. This makes sense. And he said to me, he goes, someone should do a session about this next year and it should focus on, and he mentioned a couple of things. I go, that's cool. Me and you are doing that session. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I go, no, that's awesome. Let's do that session. And we did, and it was really fun. And so thinking about that, yeah, Beth, Beth says in the chat about trying to get a webinar, how to write and present a session. This gets brought up almost every year in the Strand Advisor meeting. Like, this is something that we should do. I know there's a presenter meeting that happens before the conference. That's fine. But maybe it happens. The idea of having a session during the conference when people are kind of in it, you're deep in it and you're like, oh, I could. Yeah, Beth, you ain't lying there. Beth said because some sessions suck. And there are some.
And I think it needs to be something, and maybe, Mike, we just do it at an AT town hall when we know the call for presentation.
I agree. I think you're right.
Presentations are open.
Call for presentations. Yeah.
Yeah, when we know it's open, and just be like, okay, so have you ever wanted to present at ATIA? Maybe that's not maybe we don't toss it back and depend it on them to do it, because I don't think it will happen. Because the one that happens as a you've been accepted presenter is somewhat lacking too.
Yeah, and that was more logistical kind of things. Like, you got to have your sessions in the app and those kinds of things, which are fine. That's all important. But yeah, this is different. And so maybe it is a town hall thing. Maybe that could go. That'll be a special.
I just
event.
offered up your platform. So
It's our platform. You're only offering up the platform we have. So that's great. Go ahead, Rebecca. What do you got?
I'm just going to say, and Jennifer just put it, I said, does it have to be specific to ATIA?
No.
I mean,
No.
it could just be how to put together a session. I get overwhelmed because I'm looking at like, oh, it has to meet these standards or these. And I'm like, I don't even think I know
like, how do you write a learning? yeah, how do you writing a learning objective? Because it's different than writing an IEP goal. And how
Right.
do you know, how do you make sure your presentation is accessible, which is a whole nother AT town hall, which I won't go to because it's 101. But
Oh,
like,
I
what
wrote that
are
already.
those
I didn't even
things-
ask you guys for that feedback. I just wrote
Yeah.
that on my feedback.
What
form.
are all those things that just a good presentation makes, right? Which isn't a presentation you give at ATIA at Closing the Gap or wherever. It's the presentation you give to your group SLPs at your group meeting. Like what are
Exactly.
those components?
Yeah.
Writing a good abstract, because that one
Mhm.
always
Yeah.
scares me. They're like, oh, it needs to be 100 words or 1,000 word abstract. And I'm like, yep, nope, okay, that's just not something I'm going to do because that's
Right.
just scary.
And I'm writing that on my town hall idea list that I have in my Google
Yeah,
Keep.
and
I'll
I
write
think that
on there.
there are definitely ways that we can kind of help support those of you guys who are on the screen who have amazing ideas that should be presenting places.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. There are some really good ideas that are just kind of sitting out there that we want to get people to spread. I put in the chat, just as an aside for another project I'm on, we have a webinar tomorrow. Tomorrow, in case you're watching this, it's on February 7th for my New Hampshire grant, and it's Darla Ashton, and she's doing the art of visual schedules. And it happens tomorrow, the February 7th at 3 p.m. Eastern. The link is in the chat. If anybody's interested in coming, it is free for all. So please feel free to come. Yeah, so that's awesome. All right, other thoughts. Now it's 1:02. Well, it's 2 minutes after whatever hour you subscribe to. Go ahead. You got something, Beth? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just waving.
Oh, you're just
goodbye.
waving. Okay, that's nice.
To
Okay.
Get ready for a 1:30 session.
All right, everybody.
Could you put the link in the chat again? I think you may have put it in before Sarah came in, or maybe she didn't see it, or I don't know.
Sarah. Hold on a second. Sarah.
I just
I don't even
signed
like
up.
calling her
I
Sarah.
don't see a link.
There's Sarah.
there?
There's the link.
Who's Sarah?
Who's Sarah? Murph, there's the link. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, everybody. Have a good week. We'll see you
Bye.
later. Bye.